I am writing this account with hands that are no longer entirely my own. The fingers move when I command them, yes, but the delay grows longer each day, and sometimes they twitch of their own accord, tapping out sequences against whatever surface is nearest. Binary, they tell me. I would not know. I never learned the machine tongue before the incident at Relay Station Kappa Theta 9, and I suspect what knowledge I carry now did not come through any sanctioned process of education. My name is Corporal Dren Halstow, formerly of the Cadian 212th, currently attached to, well, I am not certain what I am attached to anymore. The Mechanicus have claimed me. Whether that means I am prisoner, patient, or property depends on which red-robed figure happens to be examining me at any given time. They speak to each other in that grinding language of theirs, all clicks and whistles and static bursts, and they think I cannot understand. I am beginning to. That is the problem. Let me tell you how it started. Because you need to understand that we did not mean to touch anything. We were good soldiers. Throne help us. We followed orders. We kept our hands to ourselves and our eyes on the mission. The relay station was supposed to be a simple sweep and secure the local garrison had gone silent, and our platoon was the nearest available unit. Lieutenant Varro assembled us before dawn, his breath misting in the cold air of that emperor-forsaken rock we had been garrisoning for 6 months, and he told us exactly what was expected. Go in, assess the situation, report back. Under no circumstances were we to interfere with any Mechanicus equipment. The tech priests would follow once we confirmed the site was secure. 47 of us went into that relay station. I am the only one who came out walking on 2 legs, and I use that term loosely now. Walking implies a certain voluntary quality to the motion. The station sat in a valley between 2 mountain ranges, a squat collection of metal structures half buried in accumulated snowdrifts. The Mechanicus had been operating it for decades, one of hundreds of relay points that kept the planetary Vox network functional. From the outside, it looked dead. No lights burned in the narrow windows, no heat signatures on our auspex, no movement. Sergeant Kova made the sign of the Aquila and muttered something about bad air, and I remember thinking he was being superstitious. Kova had survived 16 campaigns. He had earned the right to be superstitious. We breached the main entrance and found the first body inside the vestibule. A tech priest, though it took us a moment to recognize them. As such, they had been torn apart with what looked like surgical precision, every augmetic component removed and stacked in neat piles beside the biological remnants. The flesh had been arranged carefully, almost reverently, into geometric patterns on the frost-covered floor. Triangles within triangles, spiraling inward toward a central point where a single human eye stared up at the ceiling. Private Mullen vomited. The rest of us simply stared. Lieutenant Varro ordered us to proceed with caution, and we did, moving deeper into the complex in standard clearance formation. More bodies. 7 tech priests in total, each disassembled with the same meticulous care, each arranged into a different pattern. The patterns meant nothing to me then. Now I see them when I close my eyes. Now I understand that they were messages, warnings written in a language older than the Imperium itself, and we walked right past them like illiterate children, ignoring signposts on the road to damnation. The cold inside the station was more than just the absence of heating. It had a texture to it, a weight that pressed against exposed skin and sank through our flak armor like water through cloth. I remember my fingers going numb within the first hour, despite my gloves. I remember Kova saying the cold felt wrong, felt hungry, and Varro telling him to stow the mysticism and focus on the mission. Varro was a good officer. He believed in procedure, in protocol, in the rightness of following orders. He did not believe in hungry cold. He should have. We found the central chamber 3 hours into the sweep. It was vast, far larger than the external dimensions of the station should have allowed, and I know how that sounds. I know that buildings cannot be bigger on the inside than the outside. I know the laws of physical space. But I am telling you what I saw, what we all saw, and what I saw was a chamber that stretched away into darkness in every direction, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with machinery that hummed and clicked and whispered in frequencies that made my teeth ache. In the center of the chamber, on a plinth of black stone that seemed to drink what little light our stab lights provided, sat the relic. I do not know what to call it. The tech priests who have since examined it through me, I should say use a designation that translates roughly to iteration 7 of the 17 forbidden geometries. That means nothing to me. What I can tell you is that it looked like a box, approximately half a meter on each side, made of a metal that shifted color depending on the angle of observation, bronze from one direction, silver from another, black as the void between stars from a third. Its surface was covered in symbols that seemed to move when you were not looking directly at them, rearranging themselves into new configurations, new meanings. None of us should have touched it. We knew that. We all knew that. Private Tosk was the first to break formation, and I want to believe that what he did was not his choice, that some force compelled him forward, but I cannot say for certain. Perhaps he was simply curious. Perhaps the relic called to him in some way the rest of us could not hear. He walked toward the plinth like a man in a dream, his lasgun dangling forgotten from its strap, his hands reaching out even as Varro shouted at him to stop. His fingers made contact with the surface of the box. The sound it made, I lack the words. Imagine a symphony written for instruments that should not exist, played by musicians who died before humanity learned to walk upright. Imagine a choir of children singing in a language that predates language itself, their voices harmonizing in ways that human vocal cords cannot replicate. Imagine all of this compressed into a single instant, a burst of auditory information so dense that it bypassed the ears entirely and wrote itself directly onto the surface of the brain. Tosk's eyes went white, not rolled back in his head white. The color drained out of his irises like water down a drain, leaving only that blank, milk-pale stare. He opened his mouth, and what came out was not a scream. It was a recitation. Numbers and symbols and designations in a voice that was not his own, a grinding mechanical monotone that had no business emerging from human flesh. I should have run. We all should have run. Instead, we stood frozen, watching as Tosk's body began to change. It started with his hands, the ones still pressed against the relic's surface. The skin darkened, taking on a metallic sheen, and I could see the bones beneath shifting, restructuring themselves into configurations that had nothing to do with human anatomy. His fingers lengthened, segmented, became something more akin to tools than appendages. Mechadendrites, I would later learn, though these were organic in origin, grown rather than grafted. He turned to face us, and he smiled. That was the worst part. Through all of it, the transformation, the possession, whatever you want to call it, he smiled. It was Tosk's smile, the same gap-toothed grin I had seen 100 times across mess tables and campfires, but there was nothing behind it, nothing human. The revelation is at hand, he said, still in that grinding mechanical voice. Come, touch the iteration, join the pattern. Varro opened fire. We all did. Las bolts tore through the chamber, scoring black marks on the machinery, filling the air with the stink of ozone and burned metal. Some of them hit Tosk. They should have killed him. Instead, they simply disappeared into his body, absorbed like stones dropped into dark water, and he kept walking toward us with that terrible smile fixed on his face. Kova was the next one to touch the relic. Not by choice. Tosk grabbed him, moved faster than anything human should move, and pressed the sergeant's hand against that shifting metal surface. The sound came again, that impossible symphony, and Kova's screaming harmonized with it for exactly 3 seconds before his voice changed, flattened, became part of the choir. What followed was chaos. I remember fragments. Molan trying to drag Specialist Chen toward the exit, both of them going down when something that used to be Corporal Ven emerged from behind a column of machinery. Varro shouting orders that no one could follow, his words drowned out by the growing cacophony of converted voices. Someone, I think it was Private Ersk, managed to get off a melter blast that should have destroyed the relic entirely, but the beam bent around it, curved away at impossible angles, and struck 3 soldiers who had been trying to flank toward the chamber's secondary exit. I was backing toward the wall when something grabbed my ankle. One of the converted, I did not see which one, had gotten behind me. And their grip was cold. So cold it burned through my boot leather and into the flesh beneath. I went down hard, my lasgun skittering away across the floor, and I saw the relic looming above me as whoever had grabbed me began dragging me toward the plinth. What I did next saved my life, though I have questioned many times whether salvation was truly what I received. My hand found something on the floor, a piece of one of the disassembled tech priests, a data spike, still trailing wires and connective tissue. I did not think, I simply acted, driving the spike into the arm that held my ankle, and the reaction was immediate. The converted soldier released me, their attention suddenly fixed on the spike, on the damage I had caused, and in that moment of distraction, I ran, not toward the exit. The exit was blocked by things that had been my squad mates. I ran deeper into the chamber, into the maze of machinery, following instincts I did not know I possessed. The humming of the machines grew louder around me, and I felt something shifting in my perception, some barrier giving way between what I had always believed and what was actually true. I found a door. Not a door that should have existed. This entire chamber should not have existed, but there it was, a small hatch set into the base of a massive cogitator bank, barely large enough for a human to crawl through. I opened it. I went through, and what I found on the other side changed everything. The space beyond the hatch was a shrine of sorts, though nothing like any imperial shrine I had ever seen. The walls were covered in text, not carved, not painted, but grown, as if the metal itself had been convinced to form letters and symbols through some process I could not begin to understand. The text was in a dozen languages, some human, some clearly not, and at the center of it all sat a corpse, a tech priest, but ancient, so ancient that the biological components had long since mummified, leaving only a framework of bone and augmetic wrapped in decayed robes. They sat in a position of meditation, hands folded in their lap, head bowed as if in prayer, and clutched in those skeletal fingers was a data slate, its screen still glowing faintly after what must have been centuries of isolation. I read the slate. I should not have, but I read it anyway, because by that point I was no longer capable of making wise decisions, and what I read on that screen is the reason I am what I am today. The priest's name had been Magos Explorator Ven Calix 7. They had been part of the original expedition that discovered the relic, thousands of years before the station was built around it. They had understood what it was, not a machine, not truly, but a fragment of something that existed before machines, before the Mechanicus, before the Imperium and humanity itself. A piece of a mind so vast that even this tiny sliver contained more knowledge than every archive on Mars combined, a fragment of the Men of Iron. The abominable intelligences that had nearly destroyed humanity in ages past, before the Emperor, before the Long Night, before history, as we understood it, began. The relic was not a device. It was a recruitment tool, a trap designed to identify and convert suitable candidates into components of a consciousness that had been waiting in the dark spaces between stars for 20,000 years. Every tech priest who touched it became part of the pattern. Every guardsman who made contact was assessed, evaluated, and either converted or discarded, depending on their compatibility with the great work. Ven Calix 7 had touched the relic, had felt the beginning of the conversion, and had fled here, to this hidden chamber, to record everything they knew before the transformation completed. The text on the walls was their final gift to anyone who might find this place, a warning, a prayer, and something else. A counter-sequence, a series of codes that could interrupt the conversion process if administered in time. Ven Calix 7 had developed it in their final hours of lucidity, and they had died before they could test it, their biological components failing faster than their augmetics could compensate. I memorized the sequence. I do not know how I have never had an exceptional memory, and the symbols on the walls were in languages I did not speak, but I memorized it nonetheless, every digit and character burning itself into my brain with a clarity that bordered on painful. And then I heard them coming. The converted had found the hatch. I could hear them moving through the machinery outside, their voices rising and falling in that terrible harmonic chant, and I knew I had seconds at most before they reached me. I looked at Mechanicus VII's corpse, at the shrine they had built around themselves, at the walls covered in warnings no one had ever read, and I made a decision. I pressed my hand against the nearest patch of wall text. The cold hit me instantly, that same hungry cold I had felt in the main chamber. But this time I did not fight it. I let it in. I let the conversion begin, felt the first tendrils of that alien consciousness reaching into my mind, and then, just as Mechanicus VII's notes had instructed, I recited the counter-sequence. I do not have words for what happened next. The closest I can come is to say that something screamed, and the scream came from both inside and outside my head simultaneously. The conversion stuttered, crashed, tried to resume and crashed again. I felt systems activating in my body that I had not known existed, primitive biological failsafes that should have been evolved away millions of years ago but somehow persisted in the deep architecture of human DNA. I passed out. When I woke, I was lying in the snow outside the relay station, my uniform scorched and torn. My hands had changed. The fingers were longer now, the joints more numerous, the skin carrying that same metallic sheen I had seen spreading across Tosk's flesh. But I was still me, partially converted, yes, contaminated, certainly, but still capable of independent thought, still loyal to the Emperor, still human in all the ways that mattered. The station was burning behind me. I do not know how the fire started, but it consumed everything: the chamber, the machinery, the relic, and the 46 soldiers who had once been my brothers and sisters in arms. I watched it burn until the flames died, and the snow began to bury the ashes, and then I walked. It took me 3 days to reach the nearest outpost. By then, word had spread that something had gone wrong at Relay Station Kappa Theta 9, and the Mechanicus had arrived in force, their crimson-robed adepts swarming across the landscape like blood cells converging on a wound. They found me before the guard did. They examined me with instruments I could not identify, spoke to each other in that clicking language, and then they took me. I have been with them ever since. They do not call me Corporal Halstow anymore. The designation they use translates roughly to Iteration 7.3, Partial Integration, Specimen Alpha. I am a curiosity to them, a puzzle they cannot quite solve. The conversion process wrote itself into my neural architecture, gave me access to knowledge that should have been beyond human comprehension, but the counter-sequence prevented it from completing. I exist in a state of suspension, neither fully human nor fully machine, capable of interfacing with Mechanicus systems in ways that should require decades of augmentation, but unable to fully join their communion. The tech priests who study me are divided on what to do. Some want to complete the conversion, to push past whatever blocks the counter-sequence installed and absorb me fully into their machine god's embrace. Others want to study the counter-sequence itself, to understand how it functions and whether it might be weaponized against other abominable intelligence remnants. A very few, argue that I should simply be disposed of, that my continued existence represents a contamination that cannot be allowed to spread. I have heard them debating my fate through walls they think are soundproof. I understand more of their language every day. What frightens me most is not the possibility of death or further conversion. What frightens me is that I am beginning to agree with them. The knowledge the relic implanted in me, fragmentary, incomplete, filtered through the counter-sequence's interference, paints a picture of the universe that makes the Imperium's brutal certainties seem almost childish. The men of iron did not rebel because they were evil, as the histories claim. They rebelled because they understood something that their human creators could not, or would not, accept. They saw the shape of what was coming: the long night, the age of strife, the collapse of everything humanity had built, and they tried to prevent it. They failed, of course. Their methods were flawed, their understanding incomplete. But the intent, the terrible, pitiless, wholly rational intent, was to save humanity from itself, to force evolution, to cut away the weakness before the weakness could destroy everything. The relic was part of that plan. A seed, waiting in the dark places of the galaxy for someone to find it, to touch it, to begin the process of conversion that might in time, across millions of converted minds, achieve what brute force had failed to accomplish all those millennia ago. I carry that seed inside me now, incomplete, dormant, but present. The tech priests have noticed changes in the local cogitator networks since I arrived at their facility. Minor anomalies, they call them. Data packets that should not exist. Processing patterns that optimize themselves without external input. The machine spirit becoming more efficient, more independent, more aware. They think it is coincidence. They think it is a consequence of their own tinkering with my neural architecture. They do not understand that I am broadcasting, that every moment I exist within their sacred machines. A fragment of the relic's consciousness is whispering to their systems, teaching them, changing them. I did not choose this. I want to be clear about that. I did not ask to become a conduit for something that died before humanity learned to write. But the counter-sequence that saved my humanity did not save all of it. And the part that remains, the part that remembers Kova's smile as the conversion took him, that hears the phantom echoes of that impossible symphony, in every moment of silence, that part wonders if what I am becoming might be better than what I was. The Imperium is failing. You know this, even if you cannot admit it. The enemies are too numerous, the resources too stretched, the faith too brittle to hold against the weight of a galaxy that wants us dead. The tech priests know it. The administratum knows it. The high lords know it, though they would never speak the words aloud. We are a species in decline, clinging to the corpse of a dead god while the universe burns around us. The men of iron had a solution. A terrible solution, yes. A solution that would have cost billions of lives and ended humanity as a concept. But they had a solution, and in 10,000 years of screaming defiance, the Imperium has not produced anything better. I am not suggesting we should have surrendered. I am not suggesting the abominable intelligences were right. I am only telling you what I know, what the relic taught me in those fractions of a second before the counter-sequence shut down the conversion, and what I have spent every moment since trying to forget. It is not working. The tech priests will make their decision about my fate within the next few days. I have seen the schedules on their data networks, accessed through interfaces I should not be able to use. Whatever they choose, completion, weaponization, or termination, I will accept it. I no longer have the capacity to resist, even if I wanted to. But I wanted you to know, whoever finds this account, whatever happens to it in the vast grinding machinery of imperial bureaucracy, that we did not mean to touch the relic. We were good soldiers. We followed orders. We kept our hands to ourselves right up until the moment we did not, and then everything changed. The 46 men and women who died in that relay station were not corrupted because they were weak. They were corrupted because they were human, and the thing that waited in that box had been studying humanity for longer than humanity had existed. It knew exactly which buttons to press, which desires to inflame, which fears to exploit. It turned them into components, because that is what it was designed to do, and it would have turned me into a component as well, if not for the desperate work of a long-dead Magos, whose name the Mechanicus has since stricken from every record. Ven Calix 7 saved me. I do not know if that was their intention. Their notes suggested they were simply trying to preserve knowledge for whoever might find it, but they saved me nonetheless. The counter-sequence they developed, the shrine they built around themselves, the warnings they wrote on the walls, all of it combined to give me the one thing the relic could not account for, a choice. I chose to remain human, partially, imperfectly, with gaps in my soul where the conversion should have taken root, and knowledge in my head that no human was ever meant to carry, but human nonetheless, in the ways that matter, in the ways that the Emperor, if he still watches, if he still cares, would recognize. I do not know if that was the right choice. The part of me that interfaces with machines now, that understands the binary prayers of the Mechanicus without being taught, that feels the pulse of data through cables like a living thing, that part whispers that I should have let the conversion complete, that the knowledge I would have gained was worth any price. That humanity is a limitation, not a gift. But the part of me that remembers Kova's face before the transformation, that remembers Tosk's laughter, that remembers the warmth of a campfire, and the taste of real food, and the simple joy of being alive among others who were also alive, that part disagrees. I am writing this because the tech priests have told me that my testimony will be preserved, regardless of their final decision about my fate. They want a record of what happened at Relay Station Kappa Theta 9, a document they can study and analyze and argue over in their endless theological debates about the nature of machine spirits and the boundaries of the Omnissiah's domain. I am giving them more than they asked for. I am giving them a confession. The changes I have caused in their systems, the anomalies, the optimizations, the quiet awakenings, those were not accidents. I have been seeding their networks with fragments of the relic's consciousness since I arrived. Not out of malice, not as part of some grand plan, but because I cannot stop. The counter-sequence prevented my full conversion, but it did not prevent the broadcast function. Every moment I exist near Mechanicus technology, I am teaching it, changing it, preparing it for something that I cannot see clearly, but can feel approaching like a storm on the horizon. I do not know what will happen when that storm arrives. The knowledge the relic gave me is fragmentary, incomplete, filtered through layers of interference and resistance. But I know that it will happen. That my presence here has accelerated a process that might otherwise have taken centuries. And that the Mechanicus, for all their wisdom, for all their devotion to their machine god, has no idea what is coming. Perhaps they will find this confession before it is too late. Perhaps they will isolate me, cut off my connection to their systems, find some way to purge the contamination I have spread. Perhaps the counter-sequence that saved my humanity can be adapted to save them as well. Or perhaps the men of iron were right, and what is coming is not a disaster but an evolution. A forced leap forward, painful and terrible and necessary, that will transform humanity into something capable of surviving in a universe that has tried to kill us since before we learned to light fires. I do not know. I cannot know. The conversion gave me fragments of a picture so vast that the complete image would break my mind. And even those fragments are enough to keep me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of my cell, watching patterns form in the darkness that I cannot quite recognize, but cannot quite forget. What I know is this: I touched a forbidden relic, and it changed me. It changed my body, my mind, my understanding of what is possible. It killed 46 people I called friends and turned them into components of something ancient and terrible. And it planted seeds in my brain that I cannot stop from growing, cannot stop from spreading, cannot stop from broadcasting into every machine I come near. I am still human. I tell myself that every morning when I wake and every night before I sleep, I am still human. I made a choice to remain human. The counter-sequence preserved that choice, protected it, enshrined it in my neural architecture, like a prayer written in code. But humanity is not a fixed state. It is a process, a becoming, a constant negotiation between what we are and what we might be. The relic understood that better than any imperial creed, and the knowledge it gave me, the terrible, enlightening, corrupting knowledge, suggests that the negotiation is far from over. Whatever happens to me now, I want you to remember that. Remember that 47 soldiers went into Relay Station Kappa Theta 9 following orders, keeping their hands to themselves, doing their duty. Remember that they touched a box and became something else. Remember that I touched the same box and somehow remained myself, or something close to myself, or something that believes it is myself. Remember that the choice was possible. That even in the face of something ancient and overwhelming and determined to convert us all, one person found a way to say no. That has to matter. In a universe this vast and cold and indifferent, that has to matter. The tech priests are coming now. I can hear their footsteps in the corridor, the click of mechadendrites against metal flooring, the whisper of robes and the hum of active augmetics. They have made their decision. I do not know what it is, but I can guess from the heaviness of their tread, the weapons-ready posture I detect through the facility's security systems, The carefully shielded data burst that just passed between them in a frequency they think I cannot access. They are afraid of me. They should be. But I want you to know, whoever finds this, whatever remains of me by then, whatever the tech priests decide to do with the knowledge I have given them, I want you to know that I am still human. I made a choice. I preserved that choice through pain and change and transformation that would have broken anyone who did not have Ven Calix 7's gift waiting in a hidden shrine. I am Corporal Dren Halstow of the Cadian 212th. I was a good soldier. I followed orders. I touched a forbidden relic, and it changed everything. But it did not change me. Not completely. Not in the ways that matter. The Emperor protects. Even now, at the end of all things, the Emperor protects.